This is Pokemon Emerald Seaglass, a brand new ROM hack that reimagines the Hoenn region with glorious Game Boy Color style graphics. With every Pokemon from generations 1 through 3, as well as cross-generational evolutions and a few extras just for fun, this game is definitely the definitive way to experience the Hoenn region. And of course, it wouldn't be one of my videos if we weren't playing this game as a hardcore Nuzlocke, which means if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead. The level cap is the next leader's ace, no active items can be used in battle, and we play the games on set mode. If you like the videos, the sound of my voice, and this isn't your first time here, you should definitely consider hitting that subscribe button. The only way my channel's gonna be able to continue to grow is with all of your help, so anything y'all could do would be really great. But without further delay, let's jump out of this moving van and head into Pokemon Emerald Seaglass. After stepping outside of the moving van that we were stuffed into the back of with all of our boxes, we enter our new home here in Little Root Town. And I have to say that the Game Boy Color inspired sprites in this is absolutely breathtaking. And after grabbing our shiny charm, we go ahead and turn on our GameCube, which is going to allow us to input a couple of cheat codes. And I am always a fan of any game that allows us to get rare candies because grinding cringe. In addition to rare candies, there's a bunch of cheats that allow you to get wishing stars, which I'm honestly not sure what they do, but we know the drill from here. We're going to head over to our new neighbor / our parents' best friend's house, where Professor Birch's wife just tells us to go ahead and intrude on her daughter's bedroom. And when trying to take a peek at her Pokeballs, we run into May, who is incredibly flabbergasted as to why there's a boy here in her room. And we both simultaneously figure out that our parents are trying to pair us up. Because if we get together, not only will they be best friends forever, but they'll also be family forever. But May's got better things to do than talk to boys right now. She has to go help her father with his research. And when stepping back outside, we see our father's best friend, Professor Birch, being accosted by this tiny dog. And this is when we get to choose our starter Pokemon and once again take a look at these absolutely gorgeous Gen 2 inspired sprites for Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip. And even though it is by far the weakest Pokemon to choose in Hoenn, I have to choose Trico because Sceptile is honestly potentially my favorite starter Pokemon, period. And I was wrong. It's not a small rabid dog, it's a small rabid raccoon, which makes this interaction even sadder. And after pounding this thing in the face a few times, we take this rabid raccoon and we defeat the Zigzagoon. And I want to know, if May was scouting out ahead to go catch some Pokemon for her father, how come she couldn't save him? Was this all part of their plan? Anywho, back in their lab, Professor Birch decides to officially give us the Trico, who we're gonna nickname Gex. And after giving us our first official starter Pokemon, Professor Birch let us know that there is a brand new position here in the lab for an unpaid intern. And we should go meet up with May over on Route 103 because she's gonna be our supervisor. And they follow me! And it looks like Gex is already rocking out with his hidden ability, Unburden. But it's a little unfortunate that it comes with an impish nature. Over on Route 103, we're gonna run into May, who's cataloging some of the Pokemon in the local area. And now that we're packing a Pokemon, we're at least 15% more attractive, and she challenges us to a battle, sending in her Torchic and we send in Gex. And after going for a pound, doing about 50%, it's gonna go for a scratch, and it looks like Torchic is already rocking with Speed Boost. But we still outspeed, and with one more pound, we can bring it way down into the red as it goes for another scratch, increasing its speed even further. Now that the Torchic outspeeds us, it's going to go for a scratch first before we pound things out, grabbing ourselves the KO, and I love that they do a little victory dance when they get a knockout. But with that, we've defeated May. Once we get back to the lab, Professor Birch gives us our Pokedex, which means we are officially interns, and while he won't be able to pay us, he will be able to pay us in experience. And now that we have a Pokemon and a Pokedex, maybe we should make our way over to our daddy's new house. So let's go show our daddy our new Pokemon! Over on Route 101, we're gonna grab a Hoot, who we're gonna nickname Gabora. Over on 103, we're gonna grab a Zigzagoon, who we're gonna nickname Cooper. And over on 102, a Poochyena, who I never knew this was Starwolf's last name, but it's O'Donnell. After reaching Petalburg City, we're gonna head over and talk to our daddy, who's super proud that we finally have a Pokemon. And it just makes me wonder, why didn't you give me one? You're a gym leader. Now enter this sickly little boy who asks our father to give him a Pokemon. And his response? Absolutely. Wait, hold on a second. All I had to do was ask? I have waited my entire life to get a Pokemon. and we had to wait until your best friend who wanted me to seduce his daughter gave me one. Now equipped with our father Zigzagoon, Norman instructs us to take Wally over to Route 102 so he can catch his first ever partner Pokemon. And after Wally captures his first body pillow, we're gonna head back over to our daddy's gym. And all our dad has to say to us is thanks for helping this other kid catch a Pokemon, and we should head over to meet up with Roxanne and take on her and her rock hard boys. And not to come back until we're stronger. Over on 104, we're gonna grab ourselves a Poliwag, who we're gonna nickname Glenn. And in the Petalburg Woods, we're gonna grab a Caterpie, who we're gonna nickname Lavenza. And while fighting our way through the Petalburg Woods, we find this dork who's lost his goods. In the Petalburg Woods, we run into this dork who's being mugged by this land pirate. This full-grown man then hides behind this small child, and I guess it's gonna be up to us to beat up this pirate. And after beating up that pirate, Lavenza is going to ascend into a Metapod. And with our newly evolved and hardened Metapod, this land pirate is not only frightened, but also slightly intrigued, and he has to leave. For reasons. It is absolutely precious that this Hoot is flapping its little wings. Over on Route 104, we're gonna grab a Tailo, who we're gonna nickname Falco. In Rustboro City, we're gonna grab ourselves a Mankey, who we're gonna nickname Ganon. And before taking on Roxanne, we are gonna have Lavenza evolve into a Butterfree. And now with our team ready to rock and roll, it's time for us to take on Roxanne and her rock hard boys. Roxanne starts off by sending in an Anorith, and we send in Gex. We're gonna go for a Leafage right away, doing about a third, as it's gonna fire back with a Bubble, doing barely anything to us, but it will lower our speed. We're then gonna swap out, sending in Cannon as it goes for a Harden, which was a horrible idea, and I'm gonna go for a Karate Chop, getting it down pretty low, as it then goes and fires off a Bubble, which is going to lower our speed. Roxanne is then going to heal up with a potion, and we can go for another Karate Chop, bringing it down pretty low. And after that, it's going to go for another Harden, and we go for another Karate Chop. After that, Roxanne uses another potion as we decide to go for a Seismic Toss, bringing it down pretty low. And on the following turn, it goes for a Tackle, and one more Seismic Toss takes it out. Our next Pokemon out is going to be a Lileep. And we're going to outspeed, going for a Karate Chop, grabbing a massive hit and a crit no less, grabbing ourselves the KO. And this is going to lead into our final Pokemon, Nosepass. And we can outspeed, going for another mighty Karate Chop, doing just about half as it decides to go for a Rock Tomb, but fortunately it misses. And when we can fire back again with a low kick, we can take it out, and with that we've defeated Roxanne, earning our first badge. Okay, so I didn't know that this is how this worked. I threw a wishing star into a well over in Petalburg City, and it gave us a Growlithe, who we're gonna nickname Rush. After defeating Roxanne, we meet back up with that dork who almost had his goods stolen, and it turns out that the land pirate was successful this time. So let's go get those goods back. Over on 116, we're gonna grab a Nidoran male, who we're gonna nickname Peppy. And while fighting our way across 116 to rescue this guy's goods, Gex is going to evolve into a Grovyle, who has been given the Dragon type, which is awesome for everything except for, ice. My poor wife has been taken by that land pirate. Please help my darling Rico. And it turns out that this guy's wife who's been stolen by this land pirate is actually a bird. But after making quick work of this guy's small whale, we recover the goods as well as that old guy's bird wife, and I'll gladly take both my rewards now. And before we leave, we might as well grab a Whismur, who we're gonna nickname Kirby. After successfully saving the submarine pirates, we're introduced to Mr. Stone, the guy who likes rocks more than anybody else in the world. He's the president of Devon Corporation, and they've built a super awesome submarine so that way they can find the coolest rocks at the bottom of the ocean. After finding out that our profession is intern, he gives us the most intern task ever, hand deliver this written letter to his son, the only guy who loves rocks more than him. Wait, but I thought you loved rocks more than anything. Also, why can't you text him? You literally just gave me a phone. So I didn't realize what the wishing stars were before I started playing the game, and I gave myself a bunch with the cheat codes. Apparently, if you put one of them inside of this well, you're given a random Pokemon. So I've decided that every time I get one of these naturally, it'll count as a bonus encounter because it's already built into the game. And for our second wishing star, we get this psychic star. When we try to leave Rustboro City, we run into May, who I completely forgot had a battle here, and I didn't heal, so let's see how this goes. There's no funny joke this time. May starts off by sending in Skiploom, and we're going to send in Ganon. And I'm going to swap out, sending in Gabora as a Skiploom tries to go for a sleep powder, which we can avoid. And after that, it is going to get off a poison powder, and we are going to go for a peck, doing about a third. After that, it's going to go for a tackle, doing some chip damage to us, and we can get it down to about a third after we take a little bit more poison damage. And after getting tackled one more time, just below half, one more peck takes out the Skiploom. She then sends in Erase Torchic, and we're going to swap out, sending in Glenn as the Torchic fires off an Ember. Luckily, we still outspeed even with the 1 speed boost, and Glenn is going to go for a bubble, doing about a quarter to the Torchic, and we are going to luckily drop its speed a little bit as it goes for another Ember. Unfortunately, now we're burned, but I just shoot bubbles, I don't hit anybody. And the second hit does a lot more damage as it goes for another Ember, getting us down pretty low. Somehow we still outspeed this Torchic even though it's at +2 speed, and one more bubble takes it out, and we defeat May. And after playing tag with this old guy and his bird wife, I let him know that we're here to cash in on that favor. I need a lift over to Dewford Town so I can hand deliver a letter, to which Mr. Briny asks, how come he doesn't just text him? But a deal's a deal, so let's head over to Dewford. In Granite Cave, we're going to grab ourselves Makuhita, who we're going to nickname Honda. Before facing off against Brawly, O'Donnell is going to evolve into a Mightyena. And now it's time for us to take on Brawly and his fight boys. Makuhita's going to come in first, and we're going to send in Lavenza. And from here, we are going to go for a Psybeam and pick up the KO in just one shot. Next up is going to come his Heracross, who's going to go for a bulk up on the first turn, and we are going to go for a Silver Win, and I got to hope for the Omni Boost on this thing as it does like literally no damage, but we do get the Omni Boost, which is great. Now from here, we're going to go for a Protect because I assume it's going to go for a knockoff, and it does. And from here, with the Omni Boost, we can outspeed and go for a Psybeam, getting this thing down way into the red, which is going to heal it up with its Citrus Berry as it goes for a knockoff that we can just barely live on. And with one more mighty Psybeam, we take out the Heracross. Then his final Pokemon, a Meditite, is going to come in. And we are going to go ahead and swap out our Butterfree, and instead, we are going to send in Gex as this thing sets up a light screen. Once we get our turn off, we are going to go for a Leafage, doing a decent amount of damage as it goes for a bulk up to increase its attack and defense. And with another Leafage, we're going to get it down to about a third as it then sets up a Reflect. And another Leafage is going to do basically nothing as it then goes for a bulk up. So I guess I'm going to send in Glenn as Brawly uses this for a Super Potion. And when I try to put this thing to sleep, I fail to do so as it just continues using bulk up after bulk up until we eventually get the sleep off. Then from here, we can go for a Bubble, doing barely anything, but we do lower its speed as it immediately wakes up. So let's send in Gabora as it sets up a light screen this time. And I'm pretty confident that it might not actually be able to do anything to me. And once we put it to sleep, I'm going to go for a super effective Hex, getting a massive hit off on this thing. And luckily, it's still asleep, which means on the following turn, we can go for one more Hex, taking down the Meditite, and we defeat Brawly. And I wonder why it literally never tried to hit me. And now that we're packing Flash, we find Steven Stone, the man who loves stones more than anybody else in the entire Hoenn region, except maybe his father. And we hand the handwritten letter over to him, to which he responds, "Why didn't my dad text me? Wait, hold on a second. Are you an intern?" And as a reward for running this useless errand, he gives us Steel Wing. So, thanks, I guess. He then gives us his personal phone number, which if I am an intern for both the Devon Corporation and Professor Birch, seems like it might be a little inappropriate. But then he winks and leaves. And with 2 more wishing stars in tow, let's see what we get. First up is gonna be a Numel, who we're gonna name Joe. And for our second wishing star, we're gonna grab a Nosepass, who we're gonna nickname Wario. Now that we've hand-delivered the letter to Steven, the only thing that remains is bringing the Devon goods to Captain Stern over in Slateport City. And apparently he's at this Oceanic Museum where we see all these land pirates soaking up as much information as they possibly can, because they know nothing of the sea. And they hope that if they study long enough, they can go from being land pirates to being proper sea pirates. And just as we go and deliver those submarine parts to Captain Stern, we're intercepted by 2 Team Aqua Grunts, which are totally different 2 Team Aqua Grunts than the guy we fought earlier. And their boss wants those parts, and they're gonna fight him for us. But after our dragon throws a bunch of leaves at these 2 land pirates, Gabora is going to evolve and ascend into the glorious Noctowl. And now, enter the king of the land pirates, Archie. He demands to get those submarine parts because he desires to go to the sea, where everybody can have all sorts of really cool adventures. However, after letting Archie know that I've already defeated his 2 goons in a Pokemon battle, according to Pokemon battle rules, these parts are mine, and I'm giving them to Captain Stern, not to the pirates. So Archie has no choice for him and the rest of Team Aqua to leave. Over on Route 110, we're gonna grab ourselves a Pikachu, who we're gonna nickname Mouser. Over on Route 110, we run into May, and this timing seems awfully strange because her father was looking for her, and she was literally up the road from where he came from. So I'm pretty sure this is another ploy from both of our parents to get us together. And then she asks if we want to have a Pokemon battle, and how could I possibly say no to you, May? May starts off by sending in Mantike, and we're gonna send in Gabora, who I didn't even realize has been given the Ghost typing. I have always thought Noctowl should have Psychic or Ghost as a secondary typing and not Normal, so this is great. Anywho, we're gonna go for a Hex right away, doing a bit of damage as the Mantike then goes for a Confuse Ray. I'm then gonna swap Gabora out and instead send in Gex as it goes for a Bubble Beam, doing a bit of damage to us. And after that, we're gonna be able to go for a neutral Leaf Blade, picking up the KO. Next up's gonna come Urke's Combuskin. And this sprite is absolutely awesome, as the Combuskin decides to then go for a Flame Charge on our Glen, doing barely anything, and it's going to increase its speed. For the heck of it now, I'm going to go ahead and use a Rain Dance, so that way we can lower its firepower even more as it goes for another Flame Charge, scoring a crit and doing even less than it did before. And after that, when it goes for another Flame Charge, now we're at about half as it gets a speed boost off, and we can go for a Bubble, doing about half, lowering its speed, but it doesn't really matter at this point, as it then goes for a Peck, and we can go for a Body Slam, getting him down pretty low. And once another Peck gets us down to just 11 HP, we fire off a Bubble, picking up the KO on Combuskin. Her final Pokemon, Lombre, is then going to come in. And I'm going to swap out, sending in Lavenza as the Lombre goes for a Mega Drain, doing barely anything. And we can go for a super effective Silver Wind, pick up the Yoko, and defeat May. Knowing I'm going to need to switch up my team for Watson, we're going to add Peppy into the party and evolve it right away into a Nidorino. We are then immediately going to expose it to a Moonstone so it can evolve into a Nidoking. We're then also going to add Rush to the party and evolve it right away into an Arcanine. In front of the Mauville City Gym, we run into Wally and his uncle, and Wally has never participated in a Pokemon battle before, but he is insisting on making his first ever battle against Watson, the local gym leader. And now enter us, who Wally's uncle thinks will be a much better fit for his first ever Pokemon battle, but I've had at least like 3 other ones, so I don't know, Wally. Anyway, he sends in his level 16 Ralts, and we send in O'Donnell. And I guess we're just gonna go for a bite and grab the Oko on the Ralts, and maybe you should get a little more practice in Wally, and maybe like catch some more Pokemon. And now it's gonna be time for us to take on Watson and his Shocky Shock guys. Watson starts off with a Volbeat, and we send in Peppy. So we're gonna outspeed right away, going for a Flamethrower, getting this thing down way into the red as it sets up an Infestation, which is gonna do basically nothing. After that, Watson's gonna heal up with a Super Potion, and we can go for another Flamethrower, this time rolling a little bit higher, grabbing the KO. His next Pokemon in is gonna be Magneton, and this is what we prepared Peppy for. Firing off another mighty Flamethrower, getting this thing down really low. It tries to set off a Supersonic, but fortunately it misses. As Watson then goes for a second Super Potion, we can then go for a second Flamethrower, getting it back down to the same spot again. And after that, just one more flamethrower can take out the Magneton. Up next is going to come the Netric. And I don't know what this thing is packing, but it's going to go for a Howl on the first turn, and we can go for a flamethrower, hopefully scoring a big hit, and we do barely more than a third, but fortunately, we do get the burn off. So now with its attack lowered, it's going to go for another Howl, which is going to get it to a net +1, and we can go for another flamethrower, getting it down into the red, which is going to activate its Citrus Berry. After that, it's going to go for a +1 quick attack, doing barely anything to us, and we can go for a flamethrower, picking up the KO. This is going to lead into his final Pokemon, Fluffy. And we're going to go for another mighty flamethrower on this sheep, bringing it down pretty low as it then goes for a Cotton Spore, but joke's on you, buddy. I'm already not fast, and you're even slower. So one more flamethrower takes down this sheep, and we have successfully earned our third badge. On 112, we're going to grab ourselves a Houndour, who we're going to nickname Treble. Over on 113, we're going to grab ourselves a Ponyta, who we're going to nickname Epona. Over on 114, we're going to grab a Swablu, who's been changed to have the fairy typing instead of normal, and we're going to nickname Iggy. And while fighting our way over to Meteor Falls, Ganon evolves into a Primeape. And in Meteor Falls, we find ourselves a Bagon, who we're going to nickname Yoshi. In Meteor Falls, we run into these two Hot Topic nerds who are beating up this rock scientist. And now enter Archie and the Land Pirates, who are here to stop these Hot Topic dorks from beating up this rock scientist, because they want to beat up the rock scientist. But because Archie's there and Maxie isn't, the two Team Magma grunts exit stage right. And this is where Archie lays out Team Magma's grand plan. They want to expand the landmass so that way people don't run out of resources or land to build cool stuff on. Which sounds cool in theory, but we kinda need water to live. And then Archie lets us know that Team Aqua's dream and goal is to expand the ocean, destroying all land. But then where are we gonna live? Nobody sees the problems with either of these things. And after talking to this rock scientist, we find out that he's actually not a rock scientist. He's a fossil scientist. And he has no idea what these people want to do, but apparently they want to build some kind of weather machine. And he lets us know that if we want to stop this weather machine from being activated, we have to ride a ski lift. And this fossil man was right, because at the top of this very big, long ski lift that seems to never end are a bunch of Team Aqua and Magma grunts going at each other with all the ferocity of their Poochyenas. And you'd think that a team that represented both fire and water would have Pokemon that weren't just Poochyenas. And after battling our way through a bunch of Team Magma grunts, we run into the leader of Team Magma, this elder emo named Maxie. And he lets us know that once he activates this weather machine, the Hoenn region will expand to encompass the entire ocean. And with so much land, he'll be able to create a massive theme park empire like you've never seen before. I then ask him where all the water Pokemon are going to live and where we're going to get our fresh drinking water. And he says that we won't need water because we have Mountain Dew. Maxie starts off with a Mightyena and we send in Peppy. I'm going to start things off by going for a super effective Rock Smash, doing about 60% to the Mightyena as it then goes for a Swagger. And honestly, not wanting to risk what happens next, we're going to swap out setting in Ganon as it roars us, sending Peppy back in. Thanks, I guess. So we can go for another Rock Smash and grab ourselves the KO. Next up is going to come Camerupt. And I absolutely love this sprite. It is so amazing. Anywho, we're going to go for a dig. And the Camerupt is then going to try to attack us and obviously miss. And when we can erupt from the earth going for a dig, we take out the Camerupt. And this is going to lead into his final Pokemon, Gligar. And we can outspeed, once again, going for a quad super effective Ice Beam, grabbing ourselves the KO on the Gligar and defeating Maxie. And by the rules of Pokemon, he's not allowed to hit the button on that machine. While getting ready to face off against Flannery, we need to change up our team a bit here. So we are going to add Glenn back in and evolve him into a Poliwhirl. We're then going to expose him to a Water Stone right away, evolving him into a Poliwrath, since this will also come in handy for Daddy Norman. We're also going to add Pops into the party, exposing it to a Water Stone as well, so that way it can evolve into a Stormy. And now it's time for us to take on Flannery and her fire guys. Slugma comes in first and we send in Glenn. I'm going to set up a rain dance right away to try to reduce some of the damage that her fire type attacks are going to do on the rest of the team as the Slugma sets up a sunny day. Well, joke's on you, buddy. Here comes the rain. The Slugma then goes for an overheat, which is going to get reduced damage from the fact that it's raining, and also I'm Glenn. So after that, we're going to fire off a bubble beam, taking down the Slugma in one shot. Next up is going to come her Flareon, and I absolutely love Gen 2 Flareon. It still remains my favorite evolution, even though it's not that great. But anywho, we're going to go for another Bubble Beam, bringing this thing down pretty low, lowering its speed as it then heals up a bit with a Citrus Berry. It's then going to use a Sunny Day to try to get the sunlight going again, and we are going to go for another Bubble Beam, and I totally messed up here as it then goes for a Drop Kick, which is going to do a massive amount of damage to us. Flannery is then going to use this opportunity to use a Hyper Potion, which means I can set up the rain again. And from here, we're going to go for a Bubble Beam, getting it down pretty low as it sets up another Sunny Day. But joke's on you, buddy, I'm going to make it rain as another Drop Kick is going to get me down pretty low, lowering my attack. Then from here, we can go for one more Bubble Beam, taking out Flareon. Next up, Flannery is going to be sending in her Torkoal. And we're going to swap Glenn out, sending in Pops instead as it uses Sunny Day. I'm going to go for a Brine, doing about a third, as the Torkoal then goes for an Empowered Overheat, doing about 50%, and we're going to heal up with our Citrus Berry. Then, assuming another Overheat, we're going to send in Peppy, since I know it doesn't matter, because I'm going to use a Ground move on Peppy, and it gets knocked down to just 3 HP. We're then going to outspeed, going for a Dig, and fortunately the Torkoal can't do anything to us, and I have to hope that we can KO with Dig, and we don't. So that means when the Torkoal goes for a Body Slam, our Nidoking is going to get taken down. So we're going to do what I probably should have done in the first place and send in Rush. Now that the sunlight's faded, it won't do any additional damage to us, and we're going to go for an Extreme Speed, taking it down pretty low as it sets up a Sunny Day. And I just remembered that my Rush has Flash Fire, so I probably should have been having it in the first place as we go for an Extreme Speed. Now we're just going to start going for bites, hoping I can get the flinches off, and luckily we get 2 in a row as it misses on the following turn. And all it can do is set up more Sunny Days, which is great for me, as it eventually remembers it as Body Slam, but after a handful of bites, we take it out. This is going to lead into our final Pokemon Camerupt. And afraid of a ground move, we're going to swap out, sending in Gabora as it tries to go for a takedown, but it can't hit us. And we are going to go for a Relic Song on the following turn, and when we do about a quarter to it as it then sets up another Sunny Day. Another Relic Song is going to hit the Camerupt, getting it down a little bit below half as it fires off an Empowered Overheat. And can Gabora take it? It does, getting knocked down to just 37 HP. And going for one more Relic Song, we bring this thing down so freaking low as it unleashes another Overheat. But fortunately, because of the special attack drop, we are left on just 4 HP. Which means one more Relic Song will take down the Camerupt, and while we did lose our first Pokemon of the run, we come out up against Flannery relatively unscathed. And now it's time for us to take on Daddy Norman and his regular everyday normal guys. Spinda's gonna come in first as it starts swirling around, and we send in Gabora. On the first turn, I'm going to set up a Reflect since I know Norman's got a bunch of hard-hitting guys and gals as he goes for a Teeter Dance to confuse me. Which is fine because I'm just going to swap out and send in Pops as it tries to go for an Encore. Now from here, we're going to start stacking up Minimizes, and now unfortunately I'm confused, but we are going to break through for the first time as we get ourselves up to +4 as a Facade breaks through, actually hitting me. And now at +6, I can then go for a Recover to heal back up as we now get confused again. We're then going to break through and go for a Brine, doing about a third as it goes for an Encore, but it doesn't hit us. And after breaking through Confusion on the following turn, we can go for a Stab Extra Sensory, getting this thing down wicked low as it goes for a Facade, managing to hit us. After that, Norman is going to use his first Hyper Potion, and we are going to break through Confusion yet again, going for another Extra Sensory. And now finally snapped out of Confusion, we can go for an Extra Sensory one more time, taking out this little bear. Norman is then going to send in his Ace Slaking, just not wasting any time whatsoever. And we are going to go for an Extra Sensory, doing about a third, and it's loafing around on the first turn? Which is a little strange, but whatever. We're going to go for Extra Sensory again, getting it down below half, which is going to activate its Citrus Berry. It then manages to hit us with a yawn, which is super annoying, but I'm going to stay on going for extra sensory again as it then loafs about. And now that it's asleep, it manages to hit us with a feint attack as we get knocked down to just 13 HP. So we're going to swap out, sending in Ganon since I know it can't do anything this turn. And once we unleash a mighty cross chop, we take down the Slacking, which honestly was what I was most afraid of in this entire fight. But up next is going to come his Politoed. I'm going to stay in because I have no idea what this thing has, and we're going to go for a cross chop, grabbing ourselves a Yoko, because I guess Politoed's water normal in this game. That actually makes sense with all of its voice moves. Anywho, his final Pokemon, Vigoroth, comes in, and I absolutely adore this sprite. And not only that, my Quick Claw manages to activate as we go for a super effective cross chop, which means we can grab the Yoko on the Vigoroth as well. And we absolutely decimate Norman. Over on 118, we're going to grab ourselves an Electrike, who we're going to nickname Roy. And over on 119, we're going to grab a Scyther, who we're going to nickname Lucina. Before we head over to the Weather Institute, we are going to give Mouser a Thunderstone and evolve him into a Raichu. And look at this chunky little fella. While traveling to get our 6th badge, we run into Team Aqua over at the Weather Institute, where they've been doing some research. Ever since I told Archie that flooding the entire world was probably a bad idea, Team Aqua's top scientist, led by Shelly, went to go run the numbers and see if I was right. And it turns out, they don't like the math. Shelly starts off with Ludicolo, and we send in Mouser. On the first turn, I'm going to go for a Nuzzle, doing barely anything, but we do get the paralysis off as the Ludicolio goes for a Giga Drain, healing basically back up to full. On the following turn, we're going to go for a Thunderbolt, doing about half as it goes for another Giga Drain. So swapping out and sending in Gabora, the Ludicolo is going to be paralyzed on the following turn. And since it's paralyzed, we can go for a Stab Hex, picking up the KO. Shelly's going to send in a Mighty Yetta next. And we're going to swap out, sending in Ganon as it then goes for a Swagger. So afraid of punching myself in the face, we're going to swap out again, this time sending in Rush as it goes for a Dig. So we might as well swap again, sending Gabora back in as the Mighty Yetta goes for a Mighty Dig. And then back into Ganon once again as it goes for a Swagger again, so it's just going to keep on doing this. So we might as well go for broke as we activate our Quick Claw, going first, breaking through, and missing. And it goes for a Dig again. So after swapping out into Gabora, I'm just going to go for a Relic Song this time to see if we can pick up an Oko, and I get it down pretty low, and all it does is go for a Scary Face. So after it goes for a Swagger on the following turn again, we are going to punch ourselves in the face, and I thought that maybe it didn't have a Dark move until it goes for an Assurance, but luckily, we snap out of it, go for a Relic Song, pick up the KO. After defeating Shelly, this random grunt bursts in saying that Team Magma has successfully infiltrated the Relic Castle and stolen the dreaded Orb. Now they gotta get to that same place and steal their orb. And we're given this weird ghost thing as a reward that I'm not even gonna nickname. And after leaving the Weather Institute, we run into May just before we hit Fort Tree City. She takes an umbrella out of her bag and puts it over our heads so that way we can share it. We have to get a little close so that way you don't get soaking wet by the perpetual rain over by the Weather Institute. We look deeply into each other's eyes, and just as things start to get a little weird, we decide a Pokemon battle instead. May starts off by sending in a Mantine, and we're going to send in Mouser. And as the rain falls, we summon down a mighty Thunderbolt from the power of our fat rat, KOing it instantly. Our next Pokemon in is going to be a Ludicolo. And going for a Nuzzle, we're going to get the paralysis off as it decides to go for a Bubble Beam, scoring a decent hit on us. On the following turn, I'm going to go for a Thunderbolt, getting it down to about half as it fires off another Bubble Beam. So we're going to swap out just like we did up against Shelly, sending in Gabora as it goes for another Bubble Beam, lowering our speed. But joke's on you, buddy, I'm slow as hell, and going for a Hex we can outspeed, grabbing the KO. Her final Pokemon, Combuskin, comes in, and I still love this Angry Chicken. And it decides to go for a Spirit Break, doing barely anything, but it does lower our special attack, and we're going to go for a super effective extra sensory, doing about 60%. After that, it decides to go for another Spirit Break, bringing us down to just 46 HP, and one more extra sensory is still enough. So we take it out, defeating May. And as a reward, she's going to give us the ability to fly, which is great because I need to get back to my GameCube to get more rare candies. And after giving us a weird kaleidoscope, and grabbing ourselves a Mamacon over on Route 120, who we're going to nickname Kazooie. It's now going to be time for us to take on Winnowa and her Fly Guys. Winnowa starts off with a Furo, and we're going to send in Mouser. Also, winning the game let me level up to level 34. I assumed that's what the level cap was, but apparently this game only has a soft level cap, and it's actually 33, so don't hate me. Honest mistake. I'll do better next time. Anyways, the Furo goes down in 1, and after that, Winnowa's going to send in her Tropius. I'm then going to go for a Nuzzle with Mouser, and it's going to set up a sunny day on the following turn. And here's where we're going to start stacking up some double teams to hopefully evade a bunch of stuff as it goes for a Solar Beam hitting me as we get up to +3. And now that we're at +4, it's going to continue to miss, and now we're at +5. In maxing out at +6 evasion, it manages to hit us with another Solar Beam down to just 18 HP. And when going for a neutral Thunderbolt, we get it down pretty low, and it somehow manages to connect with a third Solar Beam despite being at +6. And Mouser goes down. So I guess we're going to send in Rush because we have the Sunlight. And Outspeaming, we can go for a Flamethrower, taking out the Tropius. Next down is going to come Skarmory. And that was probably a bad idea as it decides to go for an Aerial Ace that's going to be empowered by a Flying Gem doing barely anything to me. And we can go for a Flamethrower, grabbing the Oko. Next down is going to come her Pelipper. And hoping I can outspeed, it's going to go for a Protect on the first turn, blocking our Thunderfang. And on the following turn, we can go for a quad effective Thunderfang, bringing this thing down to basically nothing as it tries to go for a Supersonic. This is obviously going to prompt Winnowa to heal up with a Hyper Potion, and when going for another Thunderfang, we roll just a bit higher, taking it down. This is going to lead into her ace Pokemon, Altaria, who I'm not sure if it's still flying considering that Swablu is Fairy, and it's not. It's Dragon Fairy as it decides to go for a Dragon Dance. So we're going to swap out, sending in Pops as the Altaria goes for a second Dragon Dance. And when going for a third Dragon Dance, we can go for a super effective Ice Beam that doesn't even do half. And from here, it's going to go for an Earthquake, doing just over half to us as we go for another Ice Beam, bringing it way down into the red, activating its Citrus Berry. So we're going to swap out, sending in Gabora, knowing it's going to go for another Earthquake. It then goes for an Aerial Ace, scoring a decent hit as we set up Reflect because I need to stay alive. And after that, it goes for a Dragon Breath, doing barely anything, and we can go for a Relic Song, bringing it way down into the red, which prompts Winnowa to use her second potion. And going for another Relic Song, we do barely anything, as now it gets up to +4, and it falls asleep. So now that it's asleep, we can go for a Stab Hex, getting it way down low, as it still remains asleep, and one more Hex takes down this monster. And we defeat Winnowa, losing our second Pokemon. Also, still sorry about the level cap. And after we punch things like 20 times, Ganon is going to finally evolve into Annihilate. And I love the cross-generation evolutions, and this sprite is absolutely gorgeous. In Mount Pyre, we're going to grab a Ghastly. And at the top of Mount Pyre, we run into Archie, harassing these two old people, because Team Magma already took their orb, and now I'll take mine. We're pulling out. Weird choice of words, Archie. This old lady then tells us with the red and blue orbs both missing, some bad stuff will probably happen because they're supposed to be together. Our way through Team Magma's secret base over on Mount Pyre, we find Maxie standing before a slumbering Groudon. He then presents Groudon with the blue orb, knowing that blue, the color of the sea, is Groudon's least favorite color. This forces the mighty beast awake and he erupts with fury, exiting. And for some reason, Maxie blames us for Groudon getting up and jumping away, so now we have to battle him. He starts off with Gliscor, and we send in Rush. And going for a Flamethrower on the first turn, we do a decent amount of damage as the Gliscor then goes for a Bulldoze, getting us down to about half and lowering our speed. So we're going to swap out into Gabora, assuming he's going to go for another Bulldoze, and he does. And then we're going to go for a Relic Song, getting a little bit of a hit in as it then goes for a Screech. Maxie is then going to use a Super Potion on his Gliscor as we go for an Air Slash, doing about 50%, and going for another one gets him down into the red as he goes for another Screech. But not before Maxie uses a second Super Potion. And after going for 2 more Air Slashes, a third one will take the Gliscor out. Maxie's next Pokemon out is an Ursaring. And I've got to say, at -6, I'm certainly not staying in. So we're going to swap out and then send in Ganon as this thing goes for a Grav Apple. Excuse me, why is this bear eating apples? Our Quick Claw is then going to activate on the following turn, and we can go for a stab super effective cross chop, grabbing ourselves the Oko on the Ursaring. And so much for the leader of Team Magma being a fire guy, as he sends in Crobat next. And we're going to swap out, sending in Rush as the Crobat goes for Poison Fang, scoring a pretty big hit and getting the poison off on us. So we're going to swap out this time, sending in Pops as the Crobat then goes for a Swift. After that, on the following turn, it goes for a Leech Life, scoring a massive hit on us, and we can fire off with a Psychic, grabbing ourselves a massive hit as well, getting it down super low. We're then going to swap out again, sending in Gabora as it goes for a Leech Life for a little bit of chip damage. And then after going for a Poison Fang, not doing a whole lot of damage, but unfortunately poisoning us, we can go for a Relic Song, picking up the KO. His final Pokemon, his one and only fire Pokemon, Camerupt, comes in. And we are in a terrible situation here, and I'm going to go for a Bitter Malice, hoping I can score a big hit, as we do about a third, lowering its attack, and then it goes for a Curse. I'm then going to swap Gabora out, sending in Ganon as the Camerupt goes for a Scald, doing a decent amount of damage, and unfortunately we also get burnt. So I guess I'm going to swap out, sending in Lucina as it goes for a second Curse. And I know this is a terrible idea because I know this thing is going to have some kind of fire move, but I'm afraid. And going for an Aerial Ace, I do a little bit of damage as it then goes for a Yawn. Then hoping he's going to go for a fire move, I swap out, sending in Rush as he goes for another Curse. So on the following turn, we outspeed and we go for a Dig and get knocked down to just 18 HP as our Dig does barely anything, and a Body Slam takes down Rush. So I'm going to do what I should have done in the first place and send in Pops. Outspeed, go for a Surf, grab the KO, and I can't believe I just let my Arcanine go down like that. Wanting to rebuild up our party just a bit, I'm going to give a Metal Coat to Lucina to evolve it into a Scizor. Realizing I never got an encounter here, we're going to run into a Charmander over on the Jagged Pass, who we're going to nickname Ike. We're going to start force-feeding this thing a bunch of candy, first evolving it into a Charmeleon. And then one more time, into a Charizard. And check out both of these sprites, they're so cool. In Lily Cove City, we run into May again, where she asks if we would like to go to the mall with her. And after our misconnection last time over at the Weather Institute, I am so down for a regular, ordinary teenage date. Especially one that involves Pokemon battles. May's going to start off by sending in Tropius, and we're going to send in Ike. And we're going to go for a Flame Burst right away, scoring a massive hit, getting this thing down super low as it goes for an Air Slash, doing a little bit of damage to us. And with one more Flame Burst, we take down the Tropius. Next up is going to come Pelipper. And realizing I don't have a good solution for Pelipper anymore, we're going to swap Ike out, setting in Pops as this thing goes for a Water Pulse. We can then go for a neutral Ice Beam, getting about 50% off as it goes for a Payback, scoring a pretty decent hit on us. And on the following turn, we're going to go for a Stab Psychic, taking down the Pelipper. Next out is going to come her Ludicolo. And we're going to swap out, sending in Gabora as this thing goes for a Giga Drain. And we can then go for a Mighty Air Slash, getting it down to about a third as it fires off a Water Pulse that unfortunately connects with the Confusion. But we can break through, going for an Air Slash that we miss, and then we get Water Pulse again. After that, we're going to snap out of our Confusion, go for another Air Slash, and then take out the Ludicolo. Her final Pokemon, Blaziken's going to come in, and we can go for yet another Air Slash, getting this thing way down into the red, and we get the flinch off no less. So after that, we are going to fire off a Relic Song, finishing off the Blaziken, taking down May, and let's go on that date. Since we're going to be heading to Team Aqua's base next, we're actually going to add Roy in instead of Ike, and then evolve it into a Manectric. After heading over to Team Aqua's secret base and finding out that Archie and Shelly were planning on stealing a submarine from Captain Stern, we head over to Slateport City to go ahead and let him know, but he's too busy doing a TV interview.
And that's when Archie comes over the loudspeaker. It turns out they're already here, and we're already stealing your spooper boat. Finally, Team Aqua will become the sea pirates we've always dreamt of. No longer will we be held back by the land.
And when we rush inside, it's too late. So I guess we gotta head back over to Lily Cove City again, back to that not-so-secret base, and then take on Archie before he wakes up the other big guy. And after fighting to the back of Team Aqua's secret base, we run into the biggest, burliest man you've ever seen. He calls himself Matt. And despite the fact that he's literally blocking our way to the submarine, he says he's not stalling for time. This big burly boy starts off with a Mighty Anna, and we send in Roy. I'm gonna go for a discharge right away, scoring a pretty big hit, getting it down to about a third as this thing crunches on us, doing almost half. After that, Matt's gonna heal up a little bit Matt's gonna heal up a little bit with a super potion, which is totally not stalling. But after 2 more discharges, we take down this doggo. After that, he's gonna send in his Golbat, who we're gonna outspeed, go for another discharge, grab ourselves the Yoko, and with that, we've defeated Matt. But it turns out this land pirate let his boss Sea Pirate have just enough time because he was stalling. And off Archie goes. Over on 124, we're gonna grab a Shelter, who we're gonna nickname Birdo. I don't know why. You know it's gonna be time for us to take on Tate and Eliza and their Psy Guys. Their first couple of Psy Guys are gonna be Miss Magius and Claydol, and we send in Pops and Gex. Gex is gonna outspeed right away, going for a cross poison, doing honestly a lot less damage than I expected it to, and we're gonna go for a Surf on Pops, doing a decent amount of damage to their side of the field, as the Miss Magius then goes for a Calm Mind, and the Claydol goes for a Psychic. On the following turn, Gex is going to do the same thing, going for another cross poison, bringing it down way into the red, and we're going to get the poison off, which is neat, and that means that Pops is going to be able to take the Miss Magius down while getting Claydol down super low. But now Gex is at about half once Lunatone comes in, and then Claydol sets up play screen. On the following turn, I assume they're going to heal up, and they do, getting Claydol back up to full as Gex then goes for a Leaf Blade on Lunatone, grabbing the Yoko. Solrock is going to come in next, and Pops is going to go for an Ice Beam on Claydol, doing basically nothing. Gex is then going to go for another Leaf Blade on the Solrock, getting it way down to the red, which is going to activate its Citrus Berry, and Pops is going to go for an Ice Beam on the Claydol, getting it down to about half, as Claydol goes for another Psychic, bringing our starter down pretty low, and Solrock sets up a Sunny Day. At this point, Gex is going to go for a Leaf Blade, this time on Claydol, taking it out. And Pops is going to go for an Ice Beam on Solrock, doing barely anything as it then unleashes a 1-turn Solar Beam on Pops, doing about 60%. Tate and Eliza are then going to use their second Hyper Potion as Gex goes for another Leaf Blade, bringing this thing down way into the red, and with Pops going for another Ice Beam, we can successfully take down the Solrock, defeating Tate and Eliza. Over in Moss Deep City, we're going to grab ourselves a Porygon, who we're going to nickname Rob. After finding out the Team Magma's taken over the Mossy Space Station, we find our way to the top, where we see Steven holding off both Tabitha and Maxie. And Steven, knowing that Wallace would get jealous if he faced off against Maxie, says he'll take care of Tabitha, but it means that Maxie is up to us. Maxie now with a full team sensing Gligar and Crobat, and we send in Pops and Gex. I'm going to go for a Breaking Swipe on both of them, bringing both of their attacks down, as the Crobat goes for a Leech Life on Pops, doing a decent amount of damage. From here, Pops can go for a Surf, bringing the Gliscor down pretty low and doing barely anything to the Crobat before a Bulldoze knocks Gliscor down and I down just a tiny bit. From here, the Crobat is going to go for another Leech Life, getting Pops down wicked low as I U-turn the Gliscor, doing barely anything. And we're going to send in Gabora as Pops goes for an Ice Beam on Crobat, doing a lot less than I thought it would. And when Gliscor goes for a Bulldoze, it's going to bring Pops down way into the red. So we're going to bring Pops back, sending in Ganon, as the Crobat goes for another Leech Life, and then Gabora can go for a Bitter Malice on Gliscor, finishing it off. Dodrio's going to come in next for Maxie, and then I'm going to swap Ganon out, this time sending in Roy, as the Crobat goes for a Venoshock for reasons I couldn't possibly imagine. As Dodrio goes for a Thunderous Kick, scoring a crit, getting me down way into the red and lowering my defense. Gabora then goes for a Bitter Malice on the Crobat, taking it down. Next up is going to come his Shiftry. I'm going to swap Gabora out and then send in Gex as Roy goes for a Thunderfang, which doesn't affect the Dodrio. I did not realize it was given the ground type, as a Thunderous Kick does barely anything to Gex, but it does drop his defense. And Shiftry goes for a Leaf Blade on Gex, getting a decent hit in. So I guess we'll go for Shiftry instead, as a U-turn absolutely annihilates this thing, taking it down. And we're going to send in Lucina, and Ursaluna's going to come in on Maxie's side, and Roar can go for a Fire Fang, doing barely anything, as a Dodrio then goes for a Drill Peck, scoring a decent hit on Lucina. We're then going to swap out Roy, sending in Gex as the Dodrio goes for a High Horsepower, getting a decent hit off on us, and Lucina then proceeds to go for a Swords Dance as a High Horsepower comes in from Ursaluna, taking down Lucina. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like this fire guy should have some fire guys, and they're all ground guys, which I guess makes sense because Groudon's ground. We are in a hell of a spot here, but Gex is going to go for a Leaf Blade on the Ursaluna, bringing it down pretty low as a Drill Peck then comes in, taking down our starter Pokemon. But I didn't have a better option. So in comes Roy as Ganon goes for a Rage Fist on the Dodrio, and since we've technically gotten hit, it does quite a bit of damage as Ursaluna goes for a Facade, taking Roy down wicked low. Dodrio then goes for an Extreme Speed on Roy, taking him down as well. And left with barely anybody up on my team, we're going to send Gabora in as Ganon goes for a Rage Fist on the Dodrio, taking down this absolute monster as Camera Up comes in. On the following turn, I go for a Rage Fist, forgetting the fact that this thing is normal type, and then Gabora can go for a Roost, healing back up as Ursaluna goes for a Yawn, and then Scald can kick Gabora down quite a bit. Ganon then goes for a Close Combat and the Camera Up, bringing it down pretty low as Gabora goes for an Air Slash, taking down the Camera Up. And Ursaluna goes for a Yawn on Gabora as well as Ganon falls asleep. Gabora can then go for an Air Slash on the Ursaluna, getting it down pretty low as it then goes for a High Horsepower, getting Ganon down wicked low, and now both of my Pokemon are sleeping. Ganon continues to sleep, and so does Gabora, so that means when Ursaluna goes for another High Horsepower, Ganon gets taken down as well. Which means left with just Pop and Gabora. Pop can outspeed, go for an Ice Beam, take down Ursaluna, and Maxie has absolutely ravaged my team. After defeating Maxie, he questions whether or not Team Magma's ideas are really cool and awesome. They decide to give up on exploding Mount Chimney, which I did not realize that's why they were here at the space station in the first place. And knowing we have a few wishing stars, let's see if we can get something decent to replace our fallen friends on our team. And we got ourselves an Alolan Sandshrew, Farfetch'd, and Happiny. Desperately needing to change up our party, we are going to add in Rob and first evolve it into a Porygon 2. And then evolving it one more time into a Porygon Z. While diving underwater, we're going to find ourselves a Chinchou, who we're going to nickname Cheap. Over on Route 115, we're going to find this random team Aqua Grunt that gives us an egg from Paldea, and I can't wait to see what it is.
While battling against Team Aqua, we're gonna get ourselves a Zubat,
who we're going to nickname Keys.
and as we approach Kyogre, Archie tells us to hold it right there. Ha ha ha! Behold the power of Kyogre's least favorite color, red.
And it looks like we're going to have to Pokemon battle Archie. He's going to start off by sending in a Wailord, and I send in the Robotic Operating Buddy. And right away, we are going to go for a Discharge, scoring a massive hit, KOing the Wailord in just one. Next up is going to be his Breloom. So we're going to swap Rob out, sending in Ike as the Breloom decides to go for a Sky Uppercut, which we can resist.
And then with a mighty flamethrower,
we unleash the power of fire, destroying this little adorable plant boy. Next up comes his Sharpedo. And we're going to swap out, sending in Kazooie as it goes for a Liquidation. And I love that the Mama Kanga is holding the little baby in this. Anyways, it's going to outspeed us again, going for a Crunch, getting me down to just 24 HP. And we're going to go for a Rock Smash, scoring a massive hit. And assuming another Crunch, we're going to swap out, sending in Rob as he goes for a Poison Fang, this time doing some chip damage to us. Which is going to lead into Archie using a Super Potion. And we can fire off with a Discharge on Archie Sharpedo, taking it out. His final Pokemon, Crobat, comes in, who's going to outspeed us, going for a Leech Life, scoring a pretty big hit, and we can go for another Discharge, grabbing ourselves the Oko, defeating Archie, and ruining his hopes and dreams.
But Archie's not done yet. Even though I won the Pokemon battle, which means I get the Red Orb, he's going to present Kyogre's least favorite color, red.
And upon seeing the shine of the Red Orb, Kyogre wakes up and jumps to the surface. And here I thought he only had a swim speed. Now enter Maxie and a couple of Hot Topic workers, where it turns out that neither of them are going to get to have their perfect world. The sun, it's too much. The rain, it's too much. It turns out that the math at the Weather Institute was right. Over on Route 132, we grab a Tentacool, who we're going to nickname Slime. At the Sky Pillar, we're going to grab a Banette, who we're gonna nickname Boo. And after approaching Rayquaza, we don't even have to show him an orb. He just leaves. And now, back in Satopolis City, we see once again Groudon and Kyogre duking it out, going into Game Boy Advance graphics instead of Game Boy Color graphics. That's how you know it's serious. But then, using Dragon Ascent coming from the skies, is the mighty Rayquaza. On a pillar of light, Rayquaza comes down and says, "Hey, can you guys cut it out, please?" And now there's only one color that affects Groudon and Kyogre more than blue and red respectively, and that's green, the color of calm. And with that, the weather crisis of Hoenn ends. And just in the nick of time, our Paldean egg hatches into a Tink-a-Tink, who we're gonna nickname Kirby. Needing to switch up our party a little bit before we face off against one, we are gonna add Cheep to the party and evolve it right away into a Lantern. And now it's time for us to take on Juan and his water Pokemon in this ice-themed gym. Juan starts off by sending in Starmie, and we're going to send in Rob. The Starmie's going to outspeed us on the first turn, going for an extra sentry, which is going to do about a quarter, and luckily it doesn't flinch us, so when we fire off a discharge, we can take out the Starmie in one. Next out's going to come his Whiscash. And we're going to go for a Tri-Attack, hoping that we can grab ourselves a crit and maybe even an Oko as we do about 2/3, and the Whiscash sets up a Rain Dance. Then after that, we're going to outspeed again, go for another Tri-Attack, and finish off the Whiscash. Next up is going to come his Kingdra. And we're going to swap out, sending in Cheep because I don't know what this thing is going to go for, and it goes for a Water Pulse, barely doing anything to us. On the following turn, it's going to go for another Water Pulse, getting us down just below half, and I am going to set up a Confuse Ray. Now hoping it punches itself in the face, it does, doing a little bit of damage to itself, as then we unleash the power of Discharge. And that Discharge does basically nothing. With the rain gone, the Kingdra is still confused and punches itself once again, and now we can set up a Tail Glow. And after it attempts to break through the confusion, it uses its Ice Gem in an attempt to use an Ice Beam as it slaps itself in the face, and we can go for a +3 Discharge, taking out the Kingdra. Next up is going to come Octillery, who we are going to outspeed and go for a +3 Discharge on, absolutely annihilating this Octopus. Juan's final Pokemon, Celio, comes in. And with one more mighty Discharge, we bring the Celio almost down to nothing. And then I get Body Slammed. But then he heals, and now we can go for another +3 Discharge, this time scoring a crit Oko on Juan Celio. And with that, we've earned our 8th and final badge, Pacifilog. While diving in Pacifilog Town, we grab a Corsola, who we nickname Rocky. And I never realized it, but back in Little Root Town, there's a cut bush where you can find applins, who we're gonna nickname Lakitu. And after feeding this boy a syrupy apple, Lakitu is going to evolve into Driblin. We're also going to add Kirby into our party and have it evolve right away into a Tinkatuff. And one more time into the absolutely glorious Tinkaton, who we're going to nickname Koopa. And I thought this battle was supposed to be much, much deeper in Victory Road, but we run into Wally, who we haven't seen since he only had that level 16 Ralts. And he wants to let us know that not only has he got all 8 badges, but he's ready to take on the Elite Four. And he wants to test out his skills on us. Wally starts off with an Altaria, and we're going to send in Rob. We are going to go for a Tri-Attack right away because I know this thing is not Flying type, it's Fairy Dragon, and we do about 80% as it sets up a Dragon Dance. Wally is then going to use his first full restore, and we can unleash the power of another triple attack, bringing it down super low once again. Which once again, Wally heal. Then Wally low, and we get the burn off, which is super neat as the Altaria goes for a Moonblast after going for a Dragon Dance, which makes a lot of sense from a strategy perspective, and then it goes down to Tri-Attack. Next out's gonna be his Gardevoir. We go for a Tri-Attack, doing a massive amount of damage, getting it down pretty low, and we get the paralysis off. But when we don't also get paralyzed, I go and look and see that Porygon's actually normal electric in this gen. With adaptability, excuse you. Anywho, one more Tri-Attack takes out the Gardevoir. Next up is gonna come his Magnezone. And we're going to swap out Rob and instead send in Lakitu as he goes for a Supersonic. And on the following turn, we break through our confusion, going for a Burning Jealousy, getting the Magnezone down to its sturdy, as it then goes for a Tri-Attack of its own, doing a decent amount of damage to us, and we're frozen. So we're going to swap out, setting in Kirby, because I realize I have a massive electric weakness, and this thing is going to unleash another Tri-Attack, which we can resist, but it does burn us. Then going for a Fake Out, we can easily take out the Magnezone. Next up is going to come Roserade. So we're going to swap Kirby out, sending in Ike as the Roserade goes for a Leech Seed. But we can fire back with a Flamethrower, picking up the Oko. When his final Pokemon, Delcandy, comes in, I'm just going to go for an Overheat, hoping I can Oko this kitty cat, and we do. And with that, we've shattered Wally's hopes and dreams once again. And now that we've made it through Victory Road, let's take one look at our team before we face off against the Hoenn Elite Four. First up, we have Kirby the Tinkaton with Spirit Break, Knockoff, Fake Out, and Gigaton Hammer. Ike the Charizard with Flamethrower, Fly, Earthquake, and Overheat. Rob the Porygon Z with Discharge, Recover, Tri-Attack, and Signal Beam. Pops the Starmie with Surf, Recover, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. Lakitu the Hydrapple with Energy Ball, Burning Jealousy, Recover, and Fickle Beam. And finally, Gabora the Noctowl with Toxic, Roost, Bitter Malice, and Moonblast. And our first Elite Four challenger is going to be up against Sydney and his Dark Dudes. Sydney starts off with a Mighty Yetta, and we are going to send in Kirby. On the first turn, we are going to go for a Fake Out to get some chip damage, and then I can outspeed with a Spirit Break, taking down the Doggo. Next up is going to come his Crawdaunt. And once again, we are going to outspeed, going for another Spirit Break, getting this thing down pretty low, and we are going to lower its special attack as well. The Crawdaunt is then going to go for a Surf, which does a bit more than I honestly expected. And after that, we're going to go for a Knockoff, doing barely anything to this thing as it goes for another Surf. And then I guess we'll finish things off with a Gigaton Hammer, taking out the Crawdaunt. Next up is going to come Honchkrow. And we're going to go for another Spirit Break, grabbing ourselves the super effective Oko. Cacturne's out now. And again, we're going to go for another Spirit Break, grabbing ourselves the KO on the Cactus, which will lead into his final Pokemon, Absol, who once again will get hit with a Spirit Break, getting knocked down to effectively nothing, but it will heal up a bit with its Citrus Berry as it goes for a Slash. We're then going to go for a Gigaton Hammer on the Absol, finish it off, and we've defeated Sydney. And now it's going to be time for us to take on Phoebe and her Ghastly Ghouls. Phoebe's first Ghastly Ghoul to come out is going to be Dusclops, and we're going to be sending in Rob, who I decided to teach Shadow Ball instead of Signal Beam because it's useful. And going for a Shadow Ball, we do about 60% as the Dusclops goes for a Confuse Ray. But luckily, I'm packing a Lumberry that I was hoping to save for much later in the Elite Four, but whatever, Rob can take down the Dusclops. Next out's going to come Dusknoir. And going for a Shadow Ball, once again, we do a pretty good hit on it, doing about 50%, as it then heals up with its Citrus Berry. And the Dusknoir then goes for an Earthquake, and Rob, unfortunately, is an Electric type, taking a massive amount of damage. So let's swap Rob out and send in Gabora instead, as he tries to go for another Earthquake. From here, we can go for a Bitter Malice, doing a lot of damage and grabbing the KO. Next now it's going to come Banette, who we're going to start things off by going for a Toxicon, and the Banette is going to fire off a Shadow Ball, doing barely anything. But unfortunately, it does lower our special defense, but I'm going to go for a Moonblast, doing about 50% as it goes for another Shadow Ball, this time doing quite a bit of damage. So we're going to swap up, sending Rob back in as it tries to go for another Shadow Ball that it can't hit us with, which is going to lead Phoebe into using her first full restore, and we are going to go for a Discharge on Rob, getting a massive hit off on this thing. And with one more Discharge, we take out the Banette. This is going to lead into Frostlass. So I'm going to swap out, sending in Ike as it tries to go for a Will-O-Wisp. It then outspeeds us, going for an Ice Beam, getting a decent hit off on us, and we can go for a super effective Stab Flamethrower, bringing down the Frostlass, which will lead into our final Pokemon, Miss Magius. And I'm going to outspeed and go for an Overheat, hoping I can just Oko this thing as we bring it down way into the red, and the Miss Magius goes for a Shadow Ball, bringing Ike down to just 39 HP, before we decide to go for a Fly, Connect, KO, defeating Phoebe. And now it's time for us to take on Glacia and her Ice Dies. Glacia starts off by sending in a Dugong, who's barely an Ice Pokemon, and we send in Ike. So I'm gonna pivot immediately, sending in Pops as the Dugong sets up the hail. And this makes me wish I had taught my Charizard Sunny Day, but anywho, we're gonna go for a Thunderbolt on the Dugong, doing barely anything, as it then fires off a Signal Beam, doing quite a bit to us. Assuming another Signal Beam, we're gonna pivot back into Ike, as it does go for a Signal Beam. And then going for a Flamethrower, we do barely anything, as it then goes for a Surf, getting us down to just 47 HP. And assuming another Surf, we're going to swap out, sending in Likido instead, as it totally calls my bluff, going for an Ice Beam, bringing Likido down to just 19 HP. And thank goodness the hail stopped. So in comes Rob instead, as it sets up a hail again. And we can go for a Discharge, finishing it off. This is going to lead into our next Pokemon, Glaceon. And I guess I'll just stay in with Rob, because I don't really know what else to do here, and go for a Tri-Attack, picking up a pretty decent hit, as it goes for a Chilling Water, doing barely anything to us, but it does lower our attack. But with one more Discharge, we take out Glaceon, which is going to lead into Glalie. And again, we're going to go for a Discharge with the Robotic Operating Bunny, getting it down pretty low and getting the Paralysis off, as it decides to go for a Crunch, bringing us down pretty low. And after that, Rob can go for just one more Discharge, bringing the Glalie down. This is going to lead into Walrein. And I'm honestly in a little bit of a situation here, so we're going to swap out, sending in Kirby, as the Walrein goes for an Ice Beam, which shouldn't do a whole lot to us. We're then going to go for a Fake Out to get a bit of damage in, before going for a Knockoff, because I assume this thing has a Citrus Berry, which it does. After that, we're going to tank a Surf, and then go for a Gigaton Hammer on the Walrein, grabbing a pretty massive hit as it goes for another Surf, bringing us down to 36 HP. But with a Spirit Break, we can finish off this Walrein, which is going to lead into Cloyster, her final Pokemon. And my only healthy Pokemon is Pops, so we're going to swap out as it sets up the hail again. Then I'm going to start off by going for a Recover to get back up to full, as it goes for an Icicle Crash, doing barely anything. Then, letting loose a mighty Thunderbolt with the power of Popstar, we grab ourselves the Oko, because everybody knows Cloyster is not super special when it comes to defense, and we defeat Glacia. And now it's going to be time for us to take on Drake and his Dragon Pokemon. Drake starts off with Kingdra, and I'm going to send in Gabora. And I just Toxic to grab Calm Mind instead, because I'm hoping I can just stack them. But I should have guessed this thing is packing Ice Beam, but it does barely anything to us after going for our first Calm Mind. So after going for a second one, a second Ice Beam gets us down to just about half, as I get up to +3. And now that I'm at +3 and below half health, we're going to go for a Roost, ditching my Flying type as another Ice Beam comes in, doing barely anything. And now at +4, we are going to let loose a mighty Moonblast, taking down the Kingdra in one shot. Next out's going to come is Salamence, who's going to outspeed us, going for a Crunch, getting me down to just 13 HP, as Gabora could then go for a Moonblast, taking his ace down in one shot. But at only 13 HP, I am petrified. So we're going to swap Gabora out, sending in Pops instead, as the Flygon goes for a Crunch, calling my swap, getting me down to about half. But we outspeed, and we can go for a quad super effective Ice Beam on this Flygon, scoring ourselves the Oko. Next down is going to come Altaria. And I know that I can outspeed it because I'm a Starmie. So we're going to go for another Ice Beam on Pops, doing barely half as it sets up a Dragon Dance. We still outspeed after a single Dragon Dance, so I can go for a Recover to heal up as the Altaria goes for a Dazzling Gleam, doing a decent amount of damage to us. And when we fire off another Ice Beam, we can get it down way into the red as it goes for a Dragon Breath, getting me down to about half. But after I get paralyzed, my Lumberry activates. And then with one final Ice Beam, the Altaria goes down. This is going to lead into his final Pokemon, Steelix, the most dragon Pokemon of all. And hoping he doesn't use a rock move, I swap out Pops and send in Ike as he goes for a Crunch. Then from here, we can go for a Flamethrower on Ike, grab ourselves the KO, and we defeat Drake. And now for our final Hoenn challenge is going to be up against Wallace and his Water Guys. Wallace starts off by sending in Wailord, and we're going to send in Lakitu. The Wailord is going to set up a Rain Dance, which is basically fine for me, and I'm going to go for an Energy Ball on Lakitu, grabbing myself the KO. Next up is going to come Melodic, who's going to outspeed us, going for a quad super effective Ice Beam, getting me down to just 3 HP, and unfortunately I'm frozen. So we're gonna swap out, sending in Rob instead, as the Melodic goes for another Ice Beam, which does barely anything. Then we are gonna let loose a Mighty Discharge, doing about 60% as it heals up with his Citrus Berry, and he goes for a Toxic. And now going for a second Discharge, we can safely take out the Melodic, which is gonna lead into Whiscash. And I'm gonna swap out this time, sending in Kirby, as the Whiscash goes for an Earthquake, totally calling my swap, grabbing a crit and KOing Kirby. So we'll send in Gabora instead, who can outspeed, going for a Combine, as this thing goes for an Amnesia just to make me feel like a dick. And now it's at +4, I need to try to hit it, and I do barely anything, but I do drop its attack for what it's worth as it gets to +6 now. So I guess I might as well get to +6 as well. So after it surfs me a bunch of times, getting me down to half, I'm now at +6, and so is he. So going for a stab Bitter Malice, we do like a third. But at this point, I'm just going to keep on going for Bitter Malices as he heals up with his first full restore, and we eventually take the Whiscash down, which is going to lead into Gyarados, who is going to go for a Surf as well, because we know how much Gyarados loves using special attacks, and I can go for a Bitter Malice, picking up the KO on Gyarados. And this is what he gets for trying to go in a Combine competition with me, as Ludicolo, the party boy, comes in next, and we can go for a Bitter Malice, once again picking up the KO. And when his final Pokemon Tentacruel comes in, it's going to outspeed me, going for an Ice Beam. But at +6 special defense, this big burly bird barely takes any damage. And with one more Bitter Malice, the MVP of this run, a Noctowl, defeats Champion Wallace to become the Pokemon League champions. In that, everybody, is how I beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Emerald Seaglass. And I've got to say, I've played the Hoenn region a bunch of times. And at this point, I've done a handful of ROM hacks in Hoenn, and I've got to say, this is probably the definitive experience. Cross-generational evolutions, the physical special split, the Game Boy Color art style, this is just a 10 out of 10. And I know that we didn't really get to see it in this video, but the changes made to things like the Pokedex, as well as the Dex Nav, make this a really awesome game to play. But if you like this video and you made it this far and you're not already subscribed, then what are you doing? Hit that button. You know that you want to. And if this isn't your first time here and you think you are subscribed, well, you should double check, because there's a good chance that you're not. But anywho, I'll catch you all in the next Nuzlocke video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.